Hola, hola. This is your boy Tico, Tren, and this video is going to be about women and their world of unicorns and rainbows that they happen to tuck themselves safely within. I'm basically probably going to shatter that, so therefore this is probably going to hurt a lot of feelings. Um, the sad part about the world of unicorns and rainbows that women live in the Western world is the fact that they typically don't really have to actually stick to reality. They don't have to do anything based in reality because everything's about their feelings and everything's about protecting the women's. And the sad part about that, you learn that very quickly. I haven't heard anybody really talk about this topic when it comes to women's feelings and protecting women and making women feel all good about themselves. I've talked about this topic in a video about the whole entire erectile dysfunction. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a small subsection of men who actually do have that problem due to health concerns like high blood pressure, low blood pressure. Low blood pressure actually is a thing for some of you stupid ass content creators out there. Low blood pressure is actually a thing where the blood just doesn't flow all over your body, or poor blood circulation in general. Stuff along the lines of that. Let it be diabetes, cholesterol, because, if your arteries are clogged, obviously blood's not going to flow properly to where it needs to go. If it's clogged with a whole lot of plaque and stuff like that, and, a lot of shit going on in your arteries, or some of your veins, basically, blood's not going to flow properly to all the areas that it needs to go to. This is typically why we have things like poor blood circulation and stuff like that. That being said, I would say about I'm gonna go on a limb and say about 7% of men actually suffer from health problems where they're not able to actually get hard, or they suffer from problems from using it so much that they have to basically get like surgeries done with like pumps and implants and stuff like that. Pumps, implants, and a few other things that they basically have to use so they can actually get hard. Typically, a lot of times, and if you break your dick, which actually can happen, you typically need like some type of surgery to actually get it fixed and stuff like that, or some type of implant to get it fixed. Because that shit actually does happen too. If you don't believe me, there's a reason why they don't show daggering on too often, or have too many daggering competitions anymore. Because a lot of men have gotten their dick broken basically in daggering competitions. Daggering is a Jamaican dance, or a Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Latino dance basically that typically a lot of people participate in, especially Jamaicans. There's been a lot of Jamaicans that have gotten their dick broken from daggering competitions because they do the most ridiculous shit. But that's neither here nor there. But there's also that subsection of men who actually suffer from that problem too. There's also Americans that attempted to do it that actually gotten their dick injuries to the point where it doesn't want to get hard anymore, or it has a permanent like left hand curve or a right hand curve basically on it. It's typically how it works. But to get back to the topic, I would say there's a large chunk of men who actually can't get hard due to the fact that they're just tired of the person that they're with, or they're tired, they don't find the person that they're with sexually attractive, which is actually a real thing. The sad part about that is there's a lot of people who will sit up there and say, well, that doesn't exist, or this isn't true, or this isn't true, and this isn't that for all intents and purposes, when in fact it is. It's like, the sad part about that, the reason why we have Viagra for these people, so we can make women feel good about themselves. Now, I will say this: there is a small subsection of men where Viagra just doesn't work for, and they typically have to go all the way to the extremes to actually be able to have a working dick for all intents and purposes. It's typically how that works. It's sad, but it's so true. And the sad part about that is there's a lot of men who are sexually uninterested in the woman that they're in relationships with, so they don't even get hard anymore, and they don't want to perform anymore because they're just not sexually attracted to the women that they're in a relationship with. But the sad part about that, when it comes to society, we like to protect women's feelings, and we make it the man's fault. Everything is the man's fault, why he can't please her, or why he can't get hard for her. And the sad part about that, it should be her thing. That's her burden to bear for the fact that either she didn't upkeep herself or she didn't keep herself in a way that he finds aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't matter how much you want him to change. You still have to change yourself if you still want him to find you aesthetically pleasing, because there's a lot of men who are in sexless relationships that just can't get hard due to the fact that they don't find their significant others aesthetically pleasing. And it's true. And it might hurt a lot of people's feelings, but it is what it is. So there's that section. There's that section of where, women's unicorns and rainbows basically live at. And then you also got the whole entire thing where you're always trying to protect women's emotions, both visually, emotionally, and physically. Physically or visually or mentally, you got the sizing of the pants or clothes in general. Typically how it works is you basically have a bunch of women's pants size start at 0 and it goes all the way up to 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, basically. So typically what's happening with that is instead of actually giving women actual pant sizes that they actually are, we make women feel good and let them think that they wear a size, 7 or 6 or 5 or a 16 or a 12 and stuff like that, when in fact they're actually would be about the same size as men. So what we do is basically, this is how you know when you're in a consumerism, this is how you know who's actually in power or who actually has holds all the cards or who actually has the power in most relationships, because you typically have a bunch of women who are running around here talking about how they're treated unfairly or the world is not fair, when in fact we got clothing to make you feel good about your waist size. And I've always found that funny. Like, okay, you wear a size 16, but if you actually do the scale for 16, it actually is a bit bigger. But because women like to feel good about themselves, we're going to call it a 16 or a 12 or a 14. Stuff along the lines of that. So now women live in a society where they believe they can do no wrong, or they believe because how society views them and they're only this big, especially when it comes to shoes. Don't even get me started on shoes, because women have a different sizing. Ladies' shoes basically is sized differently than men's shoes. So this is, even if a woman has big feet, she could feel like she has small feet in a women's shoes. The sad part about that, women's shoes only go up to a certain size. So, after a while they have to start shopping in men's sizes, which is actually pretty sad. But at the same time, it's one of those things where it's like, this is typically what you get, or you get a society of people that believe that that there's nothing wrong with them, or they believe that they're this beautiful thing, when in fact your waist is about as big as mine, if not bigger than mine. It's typically how it works. So now we got a bunch of people running around here believing that, this unicorns and rainbows society, when in fact they're a ray of delusional sunshine, for all intents and purposes, in the famous words of House. They're nothing more than a ray of delusional sunshine. It's sad, but it's so true. But nobody wants to tell them this, and everybody wants to appease women, and this is typically why we live in the society that we live in. This is typically why we can write op-eds about, if a woman cheats, it's her husband's fault. If a man cheats, it's his fault. It's never the woman's fault. You ever notice that shit? And this is typically how you can tell who's actually in power or who's always been in power, because everything is about trying to please or make the woman feel at ease, or, not trying to upset the woman, for all intents and purposes. Because the sad part about that, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, women really need to actually do some soul searching within themselves to better themselves, to make themselves better people. The sad part about that, don't get me wrong, there are some good women in this world, but a vast majority of them aren't really good at what they do, or not good women, like they portray themselves out to be. Because if you make a series of bad decisions and get a lot of people caught up in those series of bad decisions, let it be children and or other people or guys and or anybody in general, you're not a good human being. Let's just say a good example. I've seen women that actually will start a fight with multiple men just so she can see her boyfriend fight some damn body. I've seen women that'll do stupid shit like, make a serious decisions and then be upset and then look for the government to come help them, bail her out, when it comes to welfare and food stamps and stuff like that. So it's one of those things where we live in a society full of women who believe that they deserve all this great stuff, when in fact they don't deserve anything at all. They deserve to have to take care of themselves or do better with themselves. But I digress.